Ciao, gentle viewers. It's great to have you back in the studio again. And can you believe it? This is our 31st video and the last video for 2017. And I hope you stay tuned next year because we have a lot of wonderful ideas to vlog about next year as well. And we want to thank you all for your subscriptions. We just passed 1,000 subscriptions, and that's just awesome. We're so grateful. Thank you so much. And today we're going to be talking about making miniature books, and I'm going to share with you my technique for making this little book that everybody's calling my bug book. It's actually called Transformations, and we're going to get started on making that right now. I thought I'd start first by giving you a little tour inside the book. So you know how I like to tie books up because they usually get really fat, and this one isn't finished. Obviously, you know, this right at the holiday season, and so I've got a lot of other things scheduled to do, including I don't know what that was, but including you know, lots of deadlines. But anyway, you get the idea. This is the cover, the front and the back, and the front is this wonderful found piece of metal and an antique drawing from a book of a bug, and the inside of the book has a piece of tracing paper in the front. Actually, I think it might be parchment, and it says Transformation, and then all the pages are hand painted, and it's not finished obviously, but I've got a little more work on it. But I have this wonderful technique for painting the pages that I'm going to show you today, and I've got a few things going on here, but not a lot. The one thing that I really wanted to do was to play with scale in this book, and so I made the centerfold as a pop out, and then I worked on a little collage page near the back as well. So we're going to get started making a little tiny miniature book. Okay, the first thing you're going to need is mixed media paper. It's really important. I usually use Strathmore mixed media paper. Can also use a roll of mixed media paper. I didn't use the roll this time like I did for the other books, but I used the mixed media tablet. Now, when you use a tablet, make sure that you hang on to it when you're finished with it, because you can use the cardboard for so many things. I recycle and reuse everything. As you know, you've been following me for a while, you know that if it comes into my studio, I try to find a way to use it. If it comes into the house, I try to find a way to use it. So often I will mail off artwork in between the backs of my pads, and they can be really large, really small, whatever, and I save them, and I have a whole file full of cardboard. So as you can see, I cut the first book out here, and I'm going to share with you my technique for doing that. It's not hard, it's really easy, and we're going to do that right now. So the dimensions of the cardboard book are 6 1/4 inches long by 3 1/2 inches wide. And if you want to do just 6 3 and make it easy for yourself, that's fine. You're not going to hurt my feelings. But basically, you're going to just mark it out on the cardboard, and then you're simply going to cut it. And I'm using an X-Acto, and the side, this side here, I'm going to cut all the way through and then bend it back. So we'll show you some small clips about how to do that. So you have your cardboard, which is going to be your book cover, and now you're going to want to cut it so that you're creating the spine and you're creating the book cover and back cover, the front cover and back cover. And so you're going to have a 1-inch piece down the middle. And so this will be 2.5 and 2.5 here, and then 1 inch. So I'm just going to mark it with my straight edge. I've got little marks there already for the 1-inch piece. And then we're going to cut through it again, just like we did last time. And don't worry if it's not exact, because if it's not exact, you can always sand it. Plus, you're making a piece of art. You're not making something that's supposed to be absolutely perfect. Yay! Okay. We're going to just slightly sand it, because as you can see it's a little rough and you don't need to have that in your book. And then we're going to tape it back together. And the reason for that is that if you don't do that, it's going to be a really hard bend on your book, and that's not what you want. So to make a real book, you're going to use bookbinding tape. And you can use any color bookbinding tape that you have. I'm just using leftover from an old project, and you don't have to worry about if it's bent or if it's rolled or whatever. We're just going to use it to tape it back together, and then it will just bend easily. So, and then you're going to cover this, so you don't have to worry about the color. So basically, we're just going to cut it and tape it. And you don't want it to be too far apart. I want them to be about the same size because I'm making a whole library. So you want it to be fairly close. Now, bookbinding tape, there's lots of different kinds. This one has a backing on it, and all you have to do is peel that off. And if I actually had fingernails, there we go. You just peel that off, and we're just going to lay it down. So I'm just going to measure it down and cut it. And tape it, and I'm going to do the other side, and then we'll be right back. It just peels apart so easily, and then you're just going to attach it. Just glue it down, or just stick it down, I should say, because it sticks. There we go. Just trim it off. All set, all ready to go. All right, next step. Okay, the next step is to create the inside of the book. And this you want slightly smaller, so you do want this to be about 6 inches by 3 inches if you're going to do 6.5 by 3.5 inches for your book. You want it to be smaller because you're going to cover the book, and you're going to wrap it on the inside. If you saw the last video, then you know how we wrapped the last book. And then this is going to, your signatures will be stitched in here, and this is just mixed media paper again. So the signatures will be stitched in here, and then we'll glue this down. So you can see the inset here, and then it is not glued down to the spine. I just glued both sides down, and that's it. So I'm going to show you that. So in order to keep your signatures from ripping through, we're going to use gel matte medium on both sides so that it'll be painted and it'll be plasticized and your pages won't rip once we get them in there. So we're going to do that right now, front and back. It's pretty easy, pretty simple. So I just finished, one side is completely dry. We're going to put gel matte medium on the other side. And we're going to let that dry and we'll come back. So the inside piece is already gel medium on both sides. So it's got a good plastic cover. And I've got that all set, all ready to go. I've got the cover already, and I've made my pages. Now the pages, I used mixed media papers, and I used different weights. I used a 300 and a 400 weight, and I'm going to paint those, and I'm going to show you how I painted them. I used the other pages as a mask, and it's kind of a fun technique, and it gives you these yummy colors. And I used a little bit of acrylic paint and some walnut ink. So I'm going to show you how I did that right now. I am using, this is called, the acrylic paint is an Amsterdam. You could use anything. I usually use golden colors, but this color just sort of appealed to me, and I'm just mixing it in my very fancy container here. And I love using Tupperware because I can put a lid on it and save it for later if I use a large quantity. When I did these pages, I used a mask technique, which is what I'm doing right now. So if you paint two pages using one as a mask and go over it, then you come up with this wonderful technique. And I'm just going to not think about it. I'm just going to get the pages nice and dirty with the paint and just play with it. And when I get close to the end, I'll call you back and we will show you what we're doing, how we've done. So I've added color wash by Adirondack. It's an old color wash. And I've got several pages together. Now you don't want to leave them together too long or they will stick together, and you don't want to do that. You want to separate them and then let them dry. And then do the other side as soon as they're dry enough to do it, and fill in the page, the parts that are still white. So I love this yummy technique. While we're waiting for the yummy pages, signatures, to finish drying, we're going to talk about the cover. And the cover of the Transformations book, for the cover of the Transformations book, I used a Cavallini paper, and I'm going to show that to you. I'm just getting these kind of folded. They're kind of plastic now that I've got the paint. I also used Adirondack color wash. I can't remember if I told you that or not. And mixed it with the acrylic paint. So the cover of the book is a Cavallini paper, and I told you that. This is how bright it is. And I decided I use the same technique, the acrylic paint and the walnut ink on the cover, on the wrapping paper for the cover of the book that I did on the pages. And that way your pages and your book are going to coordinate really splendidly. Now if you want to use a Cavallini paper, that's great. I keep lots of different wrapping papers, scraps, so that I can make smaller things and smaller books. So there's a lot of different kinds of wrapping papers that you can use. And what I wanted to share with you is you don't want something that's super shiny, and you don't want something that is very, very thin. I hope you can see that. It's really thin. or something that's very porous, like more of a handmade paper, because it's just not going to hold up. So you want something that has a bit of a, just not quite a shine, more of a matte, and that will work really well. If you use a really shiny paper, you're going to have to sand it, and that may or may not work for you, because once you sand it, then you run the risk of having the walnut ink really impermeate the paper, and it won't be an attractive look. So the paper I chose is a document paper. I decided to do something just a little bit different so you could get an idea. Plus, I don't want to make the exact same book, because I am using these books to do various journaling processes. So this paper, I left part of it blank so you could see it, and then I used the same paint technique on it, and I wiped it back as it was wet because I wanted to be able to see the writing. And then when we cover the book, which we're going to do in just a minute, you'll see I'm going to position this so that I get the nicest amount of writing on here. I wanted it to look aged and really lovely. We're going to show that next. So I have my cover all set. I'm going to use this as the outside, and this side will be the inside. So I'm going to place it on the paper. And as you can see, I kind of know where I want to place it. Went through this a little bit earlier. I wanted to make sure that the writing was fairly level. I didn't want it to go down at a slant. And so what I'm going to do is use a bone folder to create an edge so that I can see where I want it to go. And I think I like that. Okay, so then this would be my cover, and then I could put something on the cover, some piece, maybe an old watch face or something with a letter or some words or something in here, because obviously it's going to be some kind of book about text. I'm not sure yet. It hasn't told me what it wants to be, but I know it will. Okay, so we're just going to cut this down, and then I'm going to show you how to glue this in. It's pretty much the same technique that we used last time. And I'm just going to eyeball it. If you want to measure it, go right ahead. You won't hurt my feelings. I'm not super big at measuring, as you know. But you want it to be big enough so that it will wrap nicely on the book. And you want to make sure that the inside will be covered. So, and it will. That's going to be great. So this is going to cover it up, and you can see where that's going to go. Alright, so we are going to just clean it up a bit, and we'll come right back and show you how to glue it. Alrighty then, so I have it situated pretty much where I want it, and I'm going to just I'm going to glue the corners down first, because you know, if you watch the last video, I definitely like those fat, yummy corners. And then we're going to glue the papers down. Alrighty then. Alrighty then, I've got it completely glued into the book, the cover. And if you noticed, I did not glue this part, the inside. I just glued this part. So I glued this section down. And I've done it both ways, but in something like this, when you're actually creating the technique, I really liked the look of it, that it kind of pops away from the book. I just thought it was really cool. Now, if you want to glue it down, go right ahead, but I just thought it looked really neat, like a really old book that's kind of come away from the board. So we've got this finished, and the next thing we're going to do is stitch in our signatures. The signatures are pretty close to being dry, and you can see the paint technique. I just love it. I think it's really fun. And I'm using 3 signatures, or 3 pages per signature. And so that's going to give us a nice fat book, especially because they have quite a bit of pigment and walnut ink on them. So they're going to fit right in here. We're going to stitch them into this little piece, and I'm hoping I want them to be just slightly bigger than the book. Maybe they'll fit perfectly. It doesn't matter. If they stick out a little bit, I always like using decal scissors to do it, but you can get an idea of what it's going to look like. So to put these in to this piece in the bug book or the transformations, I wanted to make sure that I had a pop-out page. And so the way I did this was I used it's an antique book page, and I clear gessoed it, and then I used the same paint technique on the edges and on the whole bug picture so that it would match with the book. And then I don't know if you can see this, but I used little tiny pieces of paper and folded it so that it would pop back and forth in and out. So I simply folded it and then glued the pieces in. Now to do that, I left extra space in the middle of the book, so it takes a little bit of pre-planning. Now in this book I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just make sure that the pages are really kind of evenly spaced. So I'm going to just draw the lines. I'm just going to eyeball it and decide where I want it to go, and then just draw the lines, and that will give me the guide to where I want to stitch them in, and I'll show you that. So right about there, I think that's going to work. I'm lining up the first signature with the first line, and then here's the fold of the book. So there's a little bit of space, and I want to give a little bit of space in case I make a mistake and I get it just a little too close. I want to make sure that there's enough space in the edge to cover that up. So I'm going to just line it up here, and then I'm going to lay it down, and I'm going to use my fancy tools, these paper clips, and then I'm going to use my awl and punch 4 holes, and I'm going to put it on top of my book, my antique book, and punch the holes through, and then I'm going to stitch it. I'm going to use wax linen. If you don't have linen, you can always you could use linen thread or some kind of a heavy-duty thread and then wax it yourself. And if you didn't see the other video, the way I like to start it is just by using the scissor and making it flat, so it'll go right into the the needle head, the eye of the needle rather. So it just slides right in there. And I've cut it about, well, longer than what I need to, not too long, like maybe double it a little bit big, longer. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to tie my knot. Now, you could put the knot on the inside because you are gluing it into the book. But I have to say, I really like the knots. I like people seeing that this is a handmade book and it's a one-of-a-kind art treasure. So I'm going to just knot it. And because I really pushed the awl in, I'm going to double knot this one. Now you can knot it this way or you can use the tool to knot. And I'll show you that on the end. So in and out, pretty simple. Alright, see how long that is? It's always better to have more than less. So I'm just going to run it through and then hold the loop down with my needle and pull it. And you can create a double one if you want. That one I think is going to be just fine. And I'm just going to cut it off. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. There's the back, the front. I'm stitching my last signature into the book and I wanted to share a little tip with you. The way you can gauge where your stitches should be are once you use your paper clips to hold it in place, once you have the first stitch in, the first signature in, then you can hold it up and see where you should be stitching. Where you stitch this one, it'll give you a good idea of where that hole should be, and so on. So this hole is right about there. You can see it there, and you can see it on this side, and then just push it through. It gives you a good guide. And then for the next one too, really close to it, right about there. So that's a little tip. I have all of my signatures stitched into the inside piece, and now I'm going to glue that into the book. So that's what it looks like. Stitches, all the pages, and I've used my handy dandy paper clip to hold it in place. And I'm going to glue this side first and then the other side, matching up the spine with the signatures. And like I said, don't worry if you don't have everything perfect. Now you could use PVA glue too if you have it, which is a bookbinding glue. It's a professional bookbinding glue. But gel matte, golden, regular, matte, medium, or any kind of the golden products are all archival and professional, so that they will last a long, long time. And now I'm going to glue this side down. You want to use quite a bit of glue because you want it to stay. Like I said, we did not glue the spine, so. The last little bit is I made a tiny little piece to go into the book. It's just a little fronts piece, and I'm just going to glue it right here to cover up the very first page. You can make a front and a back piece, and it's just really simple. You could use tracing paper or parchment paper and just simply cut it to size, and I used decal scissors. which gives it a really nice, pretty little edge. And we're just going to slip that in here. Just gives your book a little fancy, sweet look. And now you want it to dry before you start to bend it and use it, but you can see that it's going to pull away just slightly, which is going to be just awesome. So we're going to leave this to dry. And we'll be back. Okay, the book is just about finished. Got the page in there, the frontispiece, and then all of the pages, which I absolutely love. They're so yummy. And I have one more little tip to share with you. So you can see how it pulls slightly out of the book. So take a bone folder, and where you cut the book, you want to depress. Where you glued it in, you want to depress that so that you get a really nice fold like that. And do it on the inside too. And that will really help with the bend. And I love it because they stick out on the edge. I just think that's so yummy. And now for the cover. Okay, let's talk about that. We all know artists are collectors. These are little bits that I've collected or found pieces, and the piece that I used on here was similar. This is similar to that one. Could use either side, but there are a whole variety of things that you could use for the cover. And I just hope that you experiment and try and play with it and just see, you know, what works for you. I'm not really sure what I'm going to put on here, or if I'm going to use metal, or maybe I'll use a large letter. I don't know. We'll have to see. But I'm happy with the way it turned out, and I can't wait to share it with you when it's completed. Can't believe we're at Chow for now. This has been a long one, and I am just so delighted to have you here. And next year I've got a lot of wonderful things planned, so I hope you tune in. And we're at the holiday season, so whatever it is you celebrate this holiday season, I'm wishing you the best, the happiest, the most peaceful season of all. So ciao ciao.